So in Visual Studio, go to the File menu, New, Project. On the left side, under Templates, expand Visual C# and Web. And here select ASP.NET Web Application. I'm going to call this Vidly and store it in my C drive in the Projects folder. Now here you see Add to Source Control is selected because I'm going to add this to Git. If you don't have Git on your machine or you don't want to add this under source control, don't worry about this. So untick the checkbox. Okay. Now here in the list of templates, select MVC. And make sure host in the cloud is not selected because we are not going to deploy this in the cloud yet. Select OK. Now, because I selected Add to Source Control, I see this dialog box where I can select either Team Foundation Version Control or TFS or Git. I'm going to select Git. OK. OK, beautiful. Our project is created. Let's see what we've got inside this project. So, open up Solution Explorer. Here we've got a bunch of folders like app_data, which is where our database file will be stored. We have app_start, which includes a few classes that are called when the application is started. Let's take a look at one of these, for example. Route config. So this is the configuration of our routing rules. Here you see we have a route with the name default and with this URL pattern. So if a URL matches this pattern, the first part of the URL is assumed to be the name of the controller. The second part is assumed to be the name of the action. And the third part is an ID we can pass to that action. With this rule, if we send a request to /movies/popular, ASP.NET Runtime will call a method or an action called popular in movies controller. Or as another example, if we send a request to /movies/edit/1, ASP.NET Runtime will call the edit action of the movies controller and will pass 1 as the ID to this action. So back here, you can see we have some default values in this route. So if our URL doesn't have any of these parts, it will be passed to the home controller. Similarly, if the URL has only the controller but not the action, it will be handled by the index action. So if we go to /movies, since the action name is not specified in the URL, it will be indexed in movies controller. Also, you can see that ID is an optional parameter. Because not every action needs an ID. We only need this when we're working with a specific resource like a movie or a customer with a given ID. We also have this content folder where we store our CSS files, images, and any other client-side assets. Next, we have controllers. And you can see our default project template has 3 controllers. Account, which has actions for sign up, log in, log out. Home, which represents the homepage. And manage, which provides a number of actions for handling requests around user's profile, like changing password, enabling 2-factor authentication, using social logins, and so on. We have fonts, which shouldn't really be here in the root. I would personally prefer to move this under content folder, but we'll leave that for a later lecture. We have models, so all our domain classes will be here. Next, we have scripts, where we store our JavaScript files. And finally, we have views, so V in MVC. Now look, here we have folders named after controllers in our application. Let me expand controllers again. So we have account, home, and manage controller. And interestingly, we have 3 folders with the same names excluding controller. So by convention, when we use a view in a controller, ASP.NET will look for that view in a folder with the same name as the controller. We also have a folder called shared, which includes the views that can be used across different controllers. And finally, we've got a few other files here. Fave icon is the icon of the application displayed in the browser. Global ASAX is one of the traditional files that has been in ASP.NET for a long time. And it's a class that provides hooks for various events in the application's lifecycle. So let's expand this and open the C# file. So when the application is started, this method will be called. And here you can see we are registering a few things, like the routes. So when the application is started, we tell the runtime these are the routes for our application. Next, we have packages.config, which is used by NuGet Package Manager. If you have never worked with NuGet, it's a package manager similar to NPM or Node Package Manager or Bower. If you have never worked with any package managers before, we use them to manage the dependencies of our application. So let's say our application has dependency to 5 external libraries. Instead of going to 5 different websites for downloading these libraries, we use a package manager, and this package manager will download these dependencies from its central repository. Also, if in the future one of these libraries has a newer version, again, we use our package manager to upgrade one or more of the existing packages. We don't have to go to 5 different websites. We also have this startup.cs, which is a new approach Microsoft is taking for starting the application. So in the next version of ASP.NET called ASP.NET Core 1.0, which is not ready yet, they've dropped global.asax, and all the startup logic is implemented in this startup class. And finally, we have web.config, which is an XML that includes the configuration for our application. Out of all the elements you see in this XML, mostly you will need to work with only 2 sections. Connection strings, which is where we specify database connection strings, and app settings, which is where we define configuration settings for our application. Okay, now that you have a good understanding of what is inside this project, let's see the building blocks of MVC architecture in action.